All right, welcome everybody. I want to start today with something different. We're not going to look at media pieces right now. We're going to look at some interesting op-eds that have been written in the last 24 to 48 hours. They relate to, one is in the New York Times, one's in the Washington Post. They relate to pretty big issues facing us right now and questions about the economy and democracy and upcoming elections and so on. So let me know if this is interesting to you and maybe we will do more of this. I want to start with an article in the New York Times called Americans Don't Want to Return to Low-Wage Jobs. This was written yesterday. It's an opinion piece by Daniel Alpert, who's a senior fellow in macroeconomics and finance at Cornell. And it's specifically about this issue where the right is framing it as businesses can't find people to hire because people are making too much money off of this enhanced unemployment. So people would rather stay home and make more or the same or close to the same rather than go in and get some job. And that is not the way I would characterize the situation. And I think this article does a lot of interesting, a good job of pointing out a lot of the aspects of this. So let's skim through it. Daniel writes, the hopes for a booming pandemic recovery, growth led by job gains in the millions every month, were dealt a blow in recent weeks by a disappointing April jobs report. Perhaps we'll see better when results for May are released this week on Friday. But for weeks, many Democratic policy and political circles have been queasy about addressing the connection between federally supplemented unemployment insurance benefits and the slowing pace of reemployment at this stage of the recovery from the pandemic. There is almost certainly a common sense connection. If you were a low-wage worker, why aggressively attempt to go back to work at a lousy, low-paying job when you can make more money by collecting unemployment benefits? Still, Republican politicians are getting it wrong, too. They are citing countless news reports that businesses are struggling to fill certain positions as both a reason to end federal unemployment benefits and as evidence that the extra benefits were too generous in the first place. They worry that the ability of some workers to stay on the sidelines of the labor market, unless employers offer wages that trump jobless benefits, could result in dangerous wage inflation, a potential increase in labor costs that they believe consumers will pay for in the form of higher priced goods and services. This is the key part. That argument simply does not hold water either. Over the coming weeks and months, as this aid for the jobless phases out, there will be a flood of anxious job seekers pouring into labor markets. Even if a significant share of workers are temporarily avoiding taking low-paying jobs while benefits remain generous, then there is no true labor shortage, as many economists and market commentators are calling it. This is essentially the argument I've been making for some time, which is the enhanced unemployment was one of the best parts of what was done by both the Trump administration and the Biden administration. Remember, 2 stimulus packages under Trump for COVID, 1 under Joe Biden. With any welfare system, or with just about any welfare system, there will be some people that are better off on the welfare than getting out of the situation in which they qualify for the welfare. That's always a thing. And in this case, because of these enhanced unemployment benefits and the fact that different states have different baseline benefits to begin with, it's conceivable that some people made more by not working than by working. We're not denying that. The point is, overall, at the macroeconomic level, the enhanced unemployment saved so many people and so many families for millions and millions of people. And it's ending. Now, the other side of this, which we will get into here, is that there's the left-wing argument, which counters the right-wing argument that was just outlined, that if people don't want to go and work for you, then your wages are too low. I mean, the way that a market works is if you don't like the supply of labor available to you, if you're offering $8 an hour, then maybe you offer $10 an hour and that gets more people interested. Now, the counter would be it's being we have an artificially inserted problem here. It's not that the market has dictated 8 or 10 or 12 or whatever the minimum wages in some places is too low. It's that there's this government coming in on top and dropping this enhanced unemployment, and that's distorting the market. Well, it's going to end, right? If that's your argument, that's soon to end. Daniel Alpert writes, Enhanced benefits are ending every day for the millions of Americans who have benefited from the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation Program, which extends unemployment insurance for 13 weeks to those who exhausted their conventional state and federal unemployment benefits. All extra federal supplements will end on September 6th, including the general $300 weekly benefit and the pandemic unemployment assistance, which provides aid to those who are self-employed. Going on to say, in the aggregate, during the week that ended on May 1st, the unemployed were still receiving almost $10 billion in federal transfers per week. That's money being directly injected into local economies. Shutting off that pipeline means the economy at large could experience one of two adverse outcomes. Either there won't be enough jobs for the people eventually looking for work because so many businesses closed, or the jobs left will be, frankly, lousier jobs. The latter possibility would leave a large share of Americans underemployed, which would cause a wide reduction in household income among the country's less wealthy half. This is a key point. Once unemployment ends, and a lot of these folks who, according to the right, have just been hanging out on unemployment, making more than they would at some of the jobs that are available, many of them are going to become job seekers. Many of them are going to become willing to accept some of these crappy or lousy jobs. This will, I guess, satisfy some on the right that these lazy people have finally gotten off their you-know-what and gotten a job. Macroeconomically, it's not going to be good. When these folks accept these subpar jobs, if you adopt a spending is stimulus mindset, a demand side mindset, if Joe, whatever, right? If some person who was making, I'm just picking numbers, $550 a week between state and enhanced federal unemployment, has no choice because the unemployment benefits end to accept a job making half of that, they now only have half the money to spend in their community. Do you think that's going to be good for all of the small businesses in that community, that Joe goes from having $550 to spend to only having $275 to spend? No, that's the problem that happened when the pandemic hit. It was a massive reduction in demand. And that is what caused a lot of business closures and the need for a lot of this stuff in the first place. So Daniel Alpert wraps by saying, the majority of the jobs that aren't back to pre-pandemic workforce levels are very low income jobs. They are what the U.S. Private Sector Job Quality Index, which I co-created, calls low quality jobs. Through March of this year, most of the private sector jobs eliminated during the pandemic that haven't been restored are production and non-supervisory jobs that offer weekly pay averaging less than $750 pre-pandemic. There are more than 45 million low-paying jobs like these, constituting roughly 43% of all production and non-supervisory jobs in the country. This is not a mere unfortunate corner of the jobs market. That's a huge piece of it. And then the big picture that he points out here is the chronic problem we face as we put COVID-19 in the rearview mirror is that the U.S. economy before the pandemic was incredibly dependent on an abundance of low-wage, low-hours jobs. It was a combo that yielded low prices for comfortably middle-class and wealthier customers and low labor costs for bosses, but spectacularly low incomes for tens of millions of others. This dynamic was first brought into stark relief by the discourse about essential workers during the worst of the pandemic. Now it will be highlighted by the frustrating, unequal outcomes of this great reopening. So it's not as simple as these jobs should just pay more and then everybody's going to want them. People are going to want these jobs when unemployment runs out. The problem is that it's not good for the economy at the macro level to have so many people that are in such a precarious situation. While I think it maybe goes too far to simply say, if people don't want to come and work for you, as many restaurants, for example, are complaining, then your wages are too low. In many cases, the wages are too low. That's absolutely true. But there's a bigger economic reality here, which is if just a couple $100 in unemployment benefits makes working not worth it for so many people, which is what the right claims, that means that a huge portion of those who are employed, we're not talking about in a pandemic, the folks that are saying, I make a little more or the same by not working. Not in a pandemic. When you have even a low unemployment rate, a lot of people are $100 a week from it not being worth it to go in. That's terrible for the economy. That means that so much of the spending that the economy depends on is hanging by a thread. And this is the point many progressive economists would make. So the takeaway is not as simple as unemployment benefits were too high and so everybody was staying home. Now, it's not that simple. It's not as simple as, well, this simply means all of these businesses should raise wages. Some of them should. It depends on the state that we're talking about. The point is we have an economy that is so precarious that just $100 or $200 a week makes all the difference in one being able to afford their meager lifestyle and in it no longer being worth it to go in and actually work these jobs. That's really the issue here. For the longest time, I was having trouble finding snacks that are healthy but actually taste great and fill me up and satisfy a craving. And that's why it's great that I stumbled upon Monk Pack and we asked them to be one of our sponsors. Monk Pack Keto Nut and Seed Bars are delicious snacks that have 1 gram of sugar or less, only 2 to 3 grams of net carbs, and just 150 calories, perfect for a keto or low carb diet, or anybody who, like me, just prefers to eat a low sugar diet. I love the Monk Pack Keto Nut and Seed Bars because it's really just a great balance of sweet and salty, soft and chewy, but with a nice crunch from the nuts and seeds. Flavors include caramel or caramel, you tell me, sea salt dark chocolate, and peanut butter dark chocolate. That's my favorite. They'll give you all of your money back if you don't love it. Go to monkpack.com. The link is down below, and they'll give you 20% off any of their products when you use coupon code Pakman.